This is the Bartholomew Town podcast.
All right, so welcoming back here to Bartholomew Town, our Lieutenant Governor Sabina Matos, who also just had really an energetic, super energetic campaign announcement. I mean, it was like a month ago now, but welcome back. I mean, there's so much to get into. There's so many things happening nationally, locally, big picture issues, acute issues. But I guess let's start off like on the campaign side, just with, you know, the energy to, you're on this unofficial joint ticket with Governor McKee. Just the energy for the first time to campaign on a statewide basis for you. Talk about that and what made you decide. I mean, it's probably pretty obvious, but what made you decide? I'm gonna pursue to be retained as Lieutenant Governor here in 2022.
Thank you so much, Bill. So it has been an amazing journey since last year when I was appointed Lieutenant Governor. I had an opportunity to travel throughout the state of Rhode Island, visit all 39 cities and towns, learn more about the issues that are affecting every single community. I have gotten an opportunity to work with leaders in different communities and with different on the 39 cities and towns. I have been able to do so much work. We have the areas in which my office has a statutory responsibility, like the Long-Term Care Coordinated Council.
Yep.
Also, with the Emergency Management Agency Coordinated Council, also advocating for the small business community with the Small Business Advisory Council. So there's so much work that we have been doing in this year, and there's so much work to be done. And as you know, I prioritize housing as the issue number one for me that I'm working on, and there is so much energy right now around the topic of housing. I'm very energized to see that we have the whole leadership of the state working towards making sure that we're building more housing and building houses at all income levels, starting from the affordable, but also market rate housing. So this is a good time for us in the state of Rhode Island because we're finally paying attention to the challenges that we are having when it comes to housing. So there's so many reasons why I want to continue doing this job. We have done a lot of work, but there's still so much to be done, and there is so much potential still for work that can be done from this office.
Yeah, I certainly would like to get deeper into housing and your work behind the scenes and all of that. But just kind of sticking with the campaign side right now, you have three primary opponents, one of whom is Senator Cynthia Mendez, running again in a similar capacity in an unofficial joint ticket with former Secretary of State Matt Brown. I guess you would call them the progressive ticket or the co-op ticket. That's sort of how they've been framed. You also have Representative Deb Ruggiero, who is in this race. And then most recently, you have former Rep. Larry Valencia, who is running on the notion that he's going to abolish the office of Lieutenant Governor. So let's start right there. You just named a bunch of things. Obviously, you chair several committees, and you know there's, of course, the elephant in the room, which is that you're the person that would, that's sort of a negative way of putting it, but you're the person who takes over as governor in the event that the governor can't serve. But specifically speaking, what's your message to anybody, whether it's Larry Valencia or anybody else who might say, we don't need a lieutenant governor. We could always have the Secretary of State or the Senate President or something, some other succession plan take place. What's your message to those folks?
I think we have been able to prove within this last year that the office serves a purpose for the state of Rhode Island. There's a lot of work that we have been doing. But within this last 2 years, what we have been able to see is that we need to have a lieutenant governor that is ready to step in case the governor is not available. And as we saw with this experience, we always think about, okay, the lieutenant governor is there in case something bad happens to the governor. But something good could happen to the governor, as we saw with Governor Raimondo being appointed Secretary of Commerce. And we need to have someone that is there ready to step in. One of the things that I would like to see is that we change our constitution to have both offices running as a ticket. And you mentioned earlier about the run as a ticket. Right now, the offices are two separate offices, the office of the governor and the office of the lieutenant governor. The governor has to run his own race. I have to run my own race. Eventually, the state of Rhode Island, I hope, will make a change and make it a one ticket and make sure that the offices run together. But as of right now, the Constitution of the state of Rhode Island have the offices running separate, and that's what I'm running my own race on.
Yeah, and I do think I would agree completely that it makes perfect sense for it to be, frankly, just part of the administration. We saw with Governor McKee how, let's be honest about it, the guy was iced out of the Raimondo administration's management of COVID-19. He was holding his own press conferences, dealing with small business and so on and so forth. But, it was an uncomfortable scene. At one point, I think more people thought Brett Smiley was the lieutenant governor simply because he was on stage all the time at the press conferences in his capacity as director of the Department of Administration. So it's an incongruent and uncomfortable mode to be in a lot of ways when you're tackling big issues like COVID, like a housing crisis. It just seems to make more sense to have a uniform administration.
And that's why I'm in favor of having the change to the state constitution to make sure that the office runs together as one ticket. But in the meantime, we're running separate. But it's good to have the lieutenant governor and the governor having a good working relation, the same way how Dan McKee and I have been doing.
Yeah, no question about it. Let's get into housing. It's no secret that housing at every level is a major challenge right now. That includes capital A affordable, lowercase a affordable, middle class, upper middle class, you name it. I have personally seen this firsthand in my own life and with a lot of my friends. And again, we're not talking about people who are counting on free housing from the government. These are folks that have either businesses or full-time jobs, and they're just having a hard time in some cases renting, never mind purchasing right now. That trickles down to a situation where then those folks end up taking housing stock that would otherwise be for people who are more in need of lowercase or capital A affordable housing. So it's a big problem. It's not just as simple as, well, let's build a bunch of, capital A affordable buildings in Providence and we'll be all set. This is a statewide issue. So what have you been doing behind the scenes and in front of the state in terms of the state as an audience to address this crisis?
Yeah. Since the beginning, when I was going through the process of the appointment for lieutenant governor, I was asked early on what was going to be my priority, and from the get-go, I said housing. And it's because of my experience in municipal government in the city of Providence, working with different CDCs, community development organizations, and seeing the impact that building affordable housing, or building just housing altogether, the impact that it has in a community, how it transforms a community for the better. And that has been my priority since the get-go. I have been able to advocate internally, speaking with the governor and his team, to make sure that we have funding and more resources available for affordable housing. As I travel through the 39 cities and towns, I have been talking about what affordable housing means. Because what I have noticed is when I travel to different communities, when you talk about affordable housing, people have a negative connotation about affordable housing. But when you start talking to people in different communities and you ask them, would you like to have more teachers living in your community? Yes. Would you like to make sure that the seniors that have been part of your community all along, but are not able to afford or maintain the properties that they live on right now, are able to have a place that they can live and they can they're allowed to age in place, that they're not displaced from their community because they're not able to afford, probably because they already retired, they don't have the same income that they had before, or just because of their physical health, they're not able to maintain the properties that they had before. So we should be able to have units available for seniors that want to continue to live in their communities and they don't want to be displaced. When I talk to the different communities and I ask them, would you like to see firefighters living in your community? Would you like the police officers to live in your community? And that's changed the perspective that they have. because when we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about all income levels. We want to make sure that we have housing available for individuals that are on the lower income, but also working at the mid-income level. And also, we need market rate because everyone needs to have access to housing in the state of Rhode Island. Right now, we have a crisis, and we need housing at all income levels.
Absolutely. I guess that kind of takes me to a point that I wasn't necessarily even planning on, this is a very free-form conversation here. I wasn't necessarily sure where we'd go, but, with the Superman building, it's an interesting situation because obviously you know Providence as well as anybody in state government. In fact, you're probably the chief Providence officer, if such a title existed inside the State House right now. And the reality is, other than, there's obviously the conversation about the blight of having the lights off and the building in disrepair and unoccupied and so on and so forth. But the generative aspect of having the Superman building full simultaneously with a new transit hub in the Jewelry District, with the Trader Joe's, with the pedestrian bridge, Plant City, the Wexford building, this is a highly positive thing for the state. And it's a highly positive thing for people who would want to move into one of those 285 apartments. But I've been kind of framing this notion of a new and an old Providence. The new Providence is great. Look, I love the pedestrian bridge. I'm vegan. I'll go to Plant City. Whatever. But at the same time, if we're going to have those 285, about 230 of them will be market rate apartments. What do we do about the old Providence, about the people who are in Elmwood, about the people who are even in the downtown area that are going to be potentially priced out and not have any place to go? So how do we concurrently construct market rate housing that's attractive to a certain type of person that can help generate small business activity, so on and so forth, while at the same time protecting and making sure that everybody else has a place to live?
So the key here is to understand that the city of Providence has areas in which we're able to add more housing. And that's going to transform both the economy of the city of Providence and the economy of the state of Rhode Island. While I was in the Providence City Council, the GrowSmart did a study, I don't know if you had a chance to see it,
yes,
projecting the impact that the growth on the population of the city of Providence and of the state of Rhode Island will have in the economy of the state of Rhode Island. So that's why I have been a big supporter of adding more housing units, and especially in communities that are willing and able to receive them, like the city of Providence. The Superman building, transforming it into a housing building, is going to have a great impact to the city of Providence, and also it's going to relieve some of the pressure for those neighborhoods that you just mentioned right now. Because the challenge that we have right now is that many people are getting displaced because of the lack of housing available in the city of Providence.
Yeah.
Adding these units in downtown is going to allow for people that probably just want to leave it right in the busing and all everything, the activity that's happening in downtown. They can move to downtown and alleviate some of the pressure from the neighborhoods like Elmwood, Elmhurst, and the east side. Adding more housing units is just going to help. I don't think it's going to create more, it's not going to add to the problem, it's just going to help. Mm-hmm. On top of that, being able to reserve some of those units to be affordable, it just also is going to help to make sure that we are not just displacing everyone from the city of Providence, which is one of the things that I have been the most concerned with. If you remember, early on, when I became the council person for the neighborhoods of Oneyville, Silver Lake, and part of that was N originally, and then Valley.
Yep.
One of the challenges at that time, it was that there was this perception that Oneyville was the place no one wanted to be labeled as I'm from Oneyville, right? And I tried to change that perception, and I was very intentional, making sure that I was promoting and highlighting the positive things that were happening in the area, working with the different stakeholders to make sure that we added more housing, affordable housing, working with Oneyville Housing, now one neighborhood builder, but also supporting the other projects that were adding housing at different income levels. making sure that I supported the projects that were already there. And I have to say, that when I started early on, one of my challenges was with the tax stabilization agreements and the way how they were being handled at the beginning. And I worked really hard with my colleagues in the City Council to make sure that we reform the tax stabilization process. Want to make sure that whenever we were given a tax stabilization, a TSA, as we refer to in short, those tax stabilization were committed and we're very responsible to the contribution that we're doing to the community, because the residents of the city were putting the good faith in supporting these projects that were coming in. And at the end of the day, they needed to see that there was good faith also from the developers in their part of their contribution back to the city. And some of the things that we put in place has helped to be able to bring more projects and more housing developments to the neighborhood and to the city of Providence. And that has transformed the community. And that's what we have to do. There are areas in the city of Providence that can afford to have more housing units to come. There are areas in this downtown in Providence that actually we should change the zoning to add more density to it. I don't want to change the neighborhoods that are traditionally very historic. I want to preserve that. But there are areas in the city of Providence in which we could be adding more density to help alleviate the housing challenges that we have.
I completely agree, and I think many people would sign on to that in a heartbeat, no question at this point. So thinking happy thoughts here, because, let's be honest, let's say, Governor McKee gets a call, you were each reelected, the governor gets a call from the Professional Golfers Association tour, and they say, we saw you playing golf at Pawtucket Country Club. We'd love for you to be added to the senior PGA tour. You're going to be a professional golfer. We're going to give you an exemption. You can play golf every single week professionally. And the governor says, I've been governor. I was reelected. I think I'm going to follow my dream and become a professional golfer. Are you ready to be governor of Rhode Island?
I'm ready to be governor of Rhode Island, but I can tell you that Governor McKee is committed to the people of the state of Rhode Island, and he has every intention of running for re-election. But I'm ready to step in if it was needed. I have been working with the different directors. I have a relationship with the different directors, the cabinet members, and that is key in order to understand what is happening in each agency, and also to understand what is needed in case that would happen. But I assure you that everything will be under control.
So you're up for the challenge of being governor?
I'm up for the challenge of being governor.
Do you think the media's been by and large, and I know that's a very generic term, but do you think the media's coverage of your administration has been fair? There's been a lot of chatter about here comes the FBI. Some people might think that there's going to be some helicopter that raids the State House the next day based on the way that some of this chatter has gone. Or do you think that's just part of the job? Look, the ILO deal happened. There's mattresses and cars to sell, so they got to put something on the news that gets people to tune in. This is exciting. So it's just part of the job. Where do you sit on that?
So I have to tell you, someone gave me an advice early on, is that you don't fight with someone that has unlimited ink, or that buy ink from by the barrel. So yeah. I don't think that fighting with the media is never a good thing.
Yeah.
I respect the media. I think that the media has been doing their job. Sometimes I would love to see more coverage of some of the more positive things that are happening, but at the end of the day, they're doing their job, and I respect them, and I try my best to send information and send you a press release about positive things that are happening. But at the same time, the media is key for democracy. So I'm happy to see that they're doing their job, and even though when we are in these positions, we may feel certain way about a story of another. At the end of the day, the media is part of democracy, and it's very key and important to democracy, and I will always respect the media.
Even if it's unfavorable coverage, you welcome it.
It's just, I think that it's unfavorable, but for their perspective, they just think that they're reporting the news. So I will try my best always to provide the news that I believe is more favorable, but at the end of the day, I'm not the news editor. They will decide what they think is news.
Last question. You were at the State House last Tuesday night, as was I, for a rally. This was I think it was last Tuesday. My timeline might be off here. It might have been 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
The leaked Supreme Court memorandum, the Alito memorandum suggesting that Roe v. Wade could be overturned. You spoke very passionately and had a very enthusiastic response from the crowd of at least 500 people. And one thing that you said that I thought was really interesting and important is that you were going to put use your platform, use your experience to try to really communicate with the governor, the Speaker of the House, the Senate President about equity in abortion access here in Rhode Island in terms of those who are state workers or Medicaid, Medicare recipients. And that's kind of the fight, the boots on the ground fight right now in Rhode Island because of the reproductive rights that were codified here in Rhode Island in 2017. If you could speak to that, just generally speaking, what do you see as the challenge, the barrier? Do you think that legislation would make it out of committee? And what can you do to try to put pressure on leaders to make that happen?
So my style of leadership has always been the one of working and getting things done. I don't get caught up with the noise.
Yeah.
I don't like to get caught up in the noise because sometimes you're not as effective when you are caught up in the noise. I prefer to work internally, respectfully, reaching out to the governor, to the Senate President, to the Speaker, bringing my perspective in my advocacy. I believe that has been more effective for me in having able to get things done that way. I have been advocating since I've been in this position for different issues, not just the reproductive rights issue. I've been advocating also for the cover all kids to make sure that all children are added, also for health care coverage. I have been advocating for the seniors to make sure that there was funding going to seniors organizations that are doing good work to protect our community. And I'm going to continue to advocate on that way. I think sometimes we are just too caught up with who's making the much noise, and we think that is being the more effective tactic. I'd rather work internally first, but that doesn't mean that if I have to be vocal and advocate vocally, like I did by sending an op-ed in my support for reproductive freedom, I will do that. But I think you have to understand that not everything gets accomplished by being at a rally. There's work that happens behind the scenes to get things done.
That's a great soundbite right there. Not everything gets accomplished by being at a rally. That applies to so many things, and it's so true. And it's like protests and rallies and all of that, so important, and there's an energy about it that I love personally, and I'm sure you do, I would assume, and most people who love the process feel. But the reality is that it comes down to the other side of activism, which is a much more calculated and behind-the-scenes type of maneuver. And I think that you've become very good at that in terms of inside the State House. That's the reputation that you have from speaking with people in the Senate, the House, different department heads, whomever. That's sort of your leadership style.
This job gives me the opportunity to advocate for the things that I believe on and that I think are important. But I have the opportunity to speak to the governor about it, the opportunity to speak to the Senate President about it, the opportunity to speak to the Speaker about it. And I'm using those opportunities to advocate for the things that I believe are important to our community, to our society, and be on my son.
Yes.
There shouldn't be a difference on what are going to be the health options available to my daughter compared to what my son is going to have. So I'm committed to this work, and I'm going to be advocating and continue to do the work, everything I can to advocate. And I just have a different approach about how I get things done. But at the same time, I'm not discarding the rallies and the work that is done out there. I think it's important. But I think that we cannot have just one tactic for getting things done.
Yeah.
It has to be a multi-tactic approach to reaching our goal.
Lieutenant Governor Sabina Matos running for Lieutenant Governor for the first time and on a statewide basis. And it's only May, got a long way to go, but welcome to election season 2022. That's for sure.
Oh, thank you. I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Ready to go. So you're going to see me everywhere, making sure that I bring the message of what the work the office has been doing, how we have been able to accomplish so much in just 1 year. And remember, I got appointed to the office, and there was, at that moment, there was no staff building the office, and so we have gotten so much done. Just yesterday, I just was able to participate of the ceremony to unveil the memorial for the Gold Star family.
Yes.
And I have to say, my office played a big role on making sure that we got to this date for today. And originally, when I spoke to the Gold Star family, we didn't have a timeline. We didn't think this could happen. And working with my office, with the leadership of Ernie Almonte, who was my chief of staff, we got to work, and finally we were able to support the Gold Star family for them to be able to have a place. In the state of Rhode Island, we didn't have a monument dedicated to the Gold Star family. It was a shame.
Yeah.
So there's so much that we have been doing, and I want to continue to do the work.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.